Abuja nights did not forgive the weak. Under the bright chandeliers of the grand ballroom at Transcorp Hilton, power gathered like perfume in the air. Politicians laughed too loudly. Businessmen shook hands too firmly. Women in glittering gowns smiled with careful calculation. This was a world where money spoke first, and humanity came later. When Daniel Lawson walked in, the room shifted. He did not smile. He did not wave. He did not try to be noticed. He didn't need to. Tall, calm, and sharply dressed in a dark tailored suit, Daniel carried the quiet authority of a man who had built his empire from discipline, not noise. At 29, he was already one of Abuja's most powerful real estate investors. The owner of luxury estates in Maitama, Asokoro, and Jabi. People greeted him carefully, respectfully. Daniel nodded once, his expression unreadable. 2 years away from the public eye, expanding his business internationally. And now he was back, and Abuja was already watching him again. A familiar voice broke through the soft music. "Daniel, tonight, I brought you something special." It was Kingsley, a wealthy associate known for his love of influence and dangerous generosity. His smile was wide, his confidence loud. Daniel glanced at him briefly. "I don't need anything." Kingsley leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You'll want this one." Daniel didn't respond, but Kingsley was already guiding him away from the ballroom, through a quieter hallway guarded by private security. The music faded. The laughter disappeared. The door opened. Inside the dim room stood a young woman. She was not dressed like the others at the party. No glitter, no expensive perfume. Just a simple dress and a fear she was trying hard to hide. Her hands were trembling. Her name was Aduni Adebayo, 23, final year accounting student, from Kubwa. And tonight, desperation had brought her into a world she did not belong to. Her eyes lifted when Daniel entered. Not seductive, not confident, afraid. Kingsley spoke proudly, like a man presenting a valuable item. "University girl, clean, quiet, needs money." Aduni's lips shook. "Please, I didn't know it would be like this." Daniel studied her. No makeup, no attitude, no performance, just fear and something else. Shame mixed with determination. "Why are you here?" he asked calmly. Aduni swallowed hard. "My brother is dying," she whispered. "His treatment costs 1 million naira. I've tried everything, jobs, loans. Nobody will help me." Her voice broke. "I just need him to live." The room went quiet. Kingsley laughed softly. "Emotional story, but business is business." Daniel didn't laugh. He looked at her again. This wasn't a girl chasing luxury. This was someone standing at the edge of survival. For the first time that night, something unfamiliar moved behind his calm eyes. Not sympathy, curiosity. "Leave us," Daniel said. Kingsley grinned and walked out. The door closed. Silence filled the room. Aduni stood frozen, her heart beating so loudly she could hear it. Daniel stepped closer, studying her like a man trying to understand something that did not fit his world. "You've never done this before," he said. She shook her head slowly. "No." Another silence. Then he said something that would change both their lives. "This is the last time you will ever have to do it." Aduni looked up, confused. Daniel turned away, his voice calm but firm. "I don't like repeating mistakes, and I don't like wasting what belongs to me." She didn't understand what he meant. Not yet. That night, Aduni crossed a line she had prayed she would never cross. But she did it for one reason: to save her brother. And in a city where power decided fate, She had unknowingly stepped into the life of a man who never let go of anything he claimed. In Abuja, some decisions save lives, and some decisions change destinies. Morning came quietly, but peace did not come with it. Pale sunlight slipped through the heavy curtains of the private suite, touching the polished floor, the untouched breakfast tray, and the edge of the bed where Aduni sat, motionless. Her body felt heavy, not just from the night, from what it meant, from what she had given up. Daniel Lawson was already awake, standing near the window with his phone in his hand, speaking in the calm, controlled tone of a man whose life never paused for emotions. "Yes," he said, "acquire the Jabi property. Don't negotiate twice." He ended the call and turned. Aduni quickly looked down. She had hoped he would leave quietly, pretend the night had never happened. But Daniel did not believe in pretending. He walked toward the table and picked up an envelope. "Your brother," he said simply, placing it in front of her. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a bank transfer slip. Milioni dari biyu dadubu dari biyu na naira. Her breath caught. "That covers the hospital deposit and initial treatment," Daniel added, as if discussing a business transaction. Tears rushed to her eyes before she could stop them. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you, sir. I don't know how to." "You don't need to thank me." His voice was calm. "You needed money. I provided it." She nodded quickly, wiping her face. For a moment, she thought it was over, that she could go back to her life, that this had been a terrible night with a necessary purpose. Then Daniel spoke again. "You'll give me your contact." Aduni looked up. "Sir?" "I don't repeat investments," he said. "If I need you, you'll be available." The words were not loud, but they carried weight. Not a request, a condition. Aduni hesitated for a second, not out of pride, but fear. But then Tunde's face appeared in her mind, his weak smile, his small voice. "Thank you, sister." She wrote her number. Daniel took the paper without looking at her. "Go to the hospital first," he said. "Confirm the payment." She nodded and stood slowly. At the door, she paused. "Sir?" He did not turn. "You saved my brother's life." Daniel's response was simple. "Then make sure it was worth it." Outside, the Abuja morning felt too bright, too normal, as if the world had not shifted overnight. Aduni went straight to the National Hospital. The payment had been received. Treatment had already started. When she saw Tunde sleeping peacefully, connected to machines that were now working to save him, her legs almost gave way. For the first time in weeks, he looked stable, alive. Her phone rang. It was her mother. "So you finally brought the money," Mrs. Bisi snapped. "Yes, Mummy." A pause. Then the tone changed slightly. "Good. At least you did something useful." The call ended. No thank you, no concern, just relief. Aduni sat beside her brother and held his small hand. "I'll fix everything," she whispered. But deep down, she knew something had changed, because help like Daniel Lawson's was never free. That evening, she went to her part-time job at a small restaurant in Wus, determined to rebuild her life. But exhaustion followed her. Fear distracted her. And one careless moment changed everything. A drink slipped from her tray, spilled on a customer. The man shouted. The manager didn't listen. "Don't come back tomorrow," he said coldly. "You're fired." Just like that. Her only steady income was gone. Aduni stepped outside into the Abuja night, her hands shaking. Hospital bills were paid. For now. But treatment would continue. drugs, tests, follow-ups, and she had no job. Her phone buzzed again. A message from Daniel Lawson. "Confirm when you're free." Aduni stared at the screen. For the first time, she understood the truth. She had not just accepted help. She had entered an arrangement. And, in Daniel Lawson's world, investments were never abandoned. The message from Daniel stayed on Aduni's screen long after the restaurant lights went off. "Confirm when you're free." Free? The word felt strange. Since her father died, Aduni had not been free a single day of her life. Every decision had been tied to survival. School fees, rent, food, hospital bills. Now her job was gone. Her brother's treatment had started, but the doctor had been clear. "This is only the first stage," he had said. "Medication, monitoring, and possible surgery later. You must prepare for ongoing expenses." Aduni knew what that meant. The 1.2 million naira had saved time, not the future. That night, she sat outside the closed restaurant in Wuse, staring at the busy road. Cars moved fast. People laughed. Abuja carried on like nothing had happened. Her phone rang. Lucy Johnson. "Aduni, I heard what happened. Are you okay?" Aduni forced her voice steady. "I lost the job." Lucy was quiet for a moment. "Then you need something better," she said carefully. "Listen, there's a staff opening at a private residence in Maitama. Live-in position, good salary." Aduni straightened slightly. "What kind of work?" "Cook and household support," Lucy replied. "But it's serious work, full-time. You may have to take leave from school." The words hit hard. School was her only hope for a different life. But then she remembered Tunde lying in that hospital bed. "I'll do it," she said. Lucy hesitated. "The house belongs to a very powerful family. They don't tolerate mistakes." "I won't make any," Aduni replied quietly, because she couldn't afford to. The next morning, Aduni woke before dawn in their small kubwa apartment. She bathed quickly with cold water, packed the few ingredients Lucy advised, and wore her cleanest, simple dress. Her mother barely looked at her. "Make sure you don't lose this opportunity," Mrs. Bisi said sharply. "We don't have time for failure." Aduni nodded and left. The drive to Maitama felt like entering another country. Wide roads, tall trees, silent security gates. When the taxi stopped in front of the Lawson estate, her breath caught. The compound was massive. Modern buildings stood behind high walls. Security men moved with quiet discipline. Everything looked controlled, expensive, untouchable. Aduni suddenly felt very small. Inside, other women were already gathered. Some older, some confident, some dressed like they had prepared for this kind of job all their lives. A tall man in a neatly pressed shirt addressed them. "I am Mr. Bello," he said, "operations manager for the Lawson residence. Each of you will prepare one dish. That will determine your suitability." The women nodded. They were led into a large industrial kitchen. Shiny counters, multiple burners, spices arranged like a professional restaurant. Aduni washed her hands slowly, trying to steady her breathing. She did not plan anything fancy. She cooked what she knew, what her late father used to love. Simple jollof rice, carefully seasoned with fried plantain and chicken. Cooked the way she learned at home, with patience, not pressure. Around her, other candidates rushed, whispered, and glanced at one another. Aduni focused only on her pot. She wasn't cooking to impress. She was cooking for her brother's life. After some time, the kitchen doors opened. The atmosphere changed immediately. A woman entered, Elegant wrapper, calm face, quiet authority. Mrs. Victoria Lawson. She walked slowly past each cooking station, not speaking, only observing. Then she stopped, right in front of Aduni. Mrs. Lawson leaned slightly closer and inhaled the aroma from the pot. Her expression changed. Not anger, not approval, something deeper. Her eyes softened, then grew distant, as if the smell had taken her somewhere far away. "This," she whispered. Mr. Bellows stepped forward. "Madam?" But Mrs. Lawson was still looking at the food. "This smells like home." She looked up at Aduni for the first time. "What is your name?" "Aduni, Ma." Mrs. Lawson studied her for a long moment. Then she gave a small nod. "Prepare a plate." Aduni's hands trembled as she served. Mrs. Lawson tasted the food. The kitchen went silent. Then she placed the spoon down gently. "This one stays." The other candidates exchanged looks. Mr. Bellow marked something on his clipboard. Aduni could barely breathe. She had done it. She had secured a job in one of the most powerful homes in Abuja. But as she followed the staff toward the residential quarters, a strange unease settled in her chest. Because she didn't know one important thing. The Lawson estate had only one owner. And the next person she would see was Daniel Lawson. Aduni did not sleep well that night. The staff quarters at the Lawson estate were clean, quiet, and more comfortable than anywhere she had lived before. A small bed, a wardrobe, a private bathroom. For someone from Kubwa, it felt like luxury. But comfort did not bring peace. Her new job meant stability, a good salary, regular meals, a chance to support her brother's treatment without begging or borrowing. Still, something inside her remained tense. Maybe it was the silence of the estate, or the feeling that everyone here moved carefully, as if one mistake could cost them everything. By morning, she was already in the kitchen, preparing breakfast under the supervision of the senior staff. "Madam likes her tea light," one of them instructed. "Sir doesn't like noise," another added. Aduni nodded at every instruction. She was determined to keep this job, because failure was no longer an option. Around 8 a.m., Mr. Bellow walked in. "Madam is satisfied with yesterday," he said. "You'll be responsible for daily meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner." Aduni bowed her head slightly. "Yes, sir." Then he added casually, "The boss returned late last night. His breakfast should be ready in 10 minutes. Aduni froze. "The boss?" she asked carefully. "Mr. Daniel Lawson," Mr. Bellow replied, already turning away. The spoon slipped slightly in her hand. Her heartbeat quickened. No, it couldn't be. There were many Lawsons in Abuja. Many Daniels. She forced herself to continue working. Maybe it was someone else. Maybe. Footsteps entered the dining area. Slow, calm, familiar. Aduni carried the breakfast tray out. And then she saw him, Daniel Lawson, standing near the table, dressed in a crisp white shirt, checking something on his phone like the world belonged to him. The tray trembled in her hands. For a moment, she couldn't move. Daniel looked up. Their eyes met. Recognition came instantly. But his expression did not change. No surprise. No confusion. Just calm awareness. Like a man seeing something he had expected all along. Aduni's throat tightened. "Sir, your breakfast," she managed, placing the tray carefully. Daniel watched her for a moment. Then he spoke quietly. "You got the job." It wasn't a question. Aduni nodded, unable to meet his eyes. "Yes, sir." A short silence followed. Then he pulled out his chair and sat. "Good," he said simply. That was all. No mention of the night. No explanation. No warning. But the message was clear. He knew, and he wasn't surprised. As Aduni turned to leave, his voice stopped her. Aduni. She froze. Yes, sir. Daniel looked at her directly now. You work here now. Do your job well. His tone was calm. Professional. But his eyes held something else. Control. You won't have problems, he added. Aduni nodded quickly. I won't, sir. She walked back to the kitchen, her legs slightly weak. Inside, the other staff were busy, unaware that her world had just shifted again. She had come to the Lawson estate, hoping for a new beginning, a place where she could work quietly and rebuild her life. But now she understood the truth. There was no distance between her past and her present. The man who had seen her at her most desperate moment was now her employer, her provider, and the owner of the house she lived in. That afternoon, her phone rang. It was the hospital. Your brother is responding to treatment, the doctor said. Relief flooded her chest. For the first time in days, she smiled. Maybe this job had come at the right time. Maybe things were finally turning around. But as she stepped outside the kitchen later and saw Daniel speaking with a group of business associates, calm and powerful, giving instructions that everyone obeyed without question, a quiet realization settled in her heart. Her brother's life was improving. Her job was secure. Her future was tied to this house. And in Daniel Lawson's world, nothing was ever temporary. By the end of her first week, Aduni understood one thing clearly. The Lawson estate did not run on comfort. It ran on discipline. Every morning began before sunrise. Breakfast had to be ready by 7:30 a.m. Lunch was scheduled exactly. Dinner timing never changed. The house was quiet, orderly, and precise, like the life of the man who owned it. Daniel Lawson did not shout. He did not repeat himself. He simply expected things to be done right the first time. And somehow, that was more intimidating than anger. Aduni kept her head down and focused on her work. She spoke only when necessary. She moved carefully, learning the rhythm of the kitchen, the preferences of Mrs. Lawson, and the silent rules of the household. Miss Victoria Lawson, unlike her son, spoke to her occasionally. You cook with patience, she said one afternoon. Aduni nodded respectfully. Thank you, Ma. Mrs. Lawson studied her for a moment. Good food comes from a calm heart, she added. Aduni forced a small smile. If only that were true, because her heart was rarely calm. Every evening after work, she called the hospital. Tunda was improving slowly. The swelling had reduced. His appetite was returning. But the doctor reminded her again. This treatment will continue for months. You must prepare. The salary from the estate would help, but the cost of long-term medication was heavy. Aduni began saving every naira. No unnecessary spending. No new clothes. No transport. Her life became one goal. Keep the job. Keep the income. Keep her brother alive. One evening, while preparing dinner, Mr. Bello entered the kitchen. The boss will have a guest tonight, he said. Private dinner. Prepare something presentable. Yes, sir. Aduni worked carefully, selecting the best ingredients, arranging the table herself. At exactly 8 p.m., Daniel entered the dining area with his guest. Aduni froze when she saw the man. Kingsley. The same man from that night. Her hands tightened around the serving spoon. Kingsley saw her too. His smile widened slowly. Well, he said, settling into his chair. So this is where you ended up. Aduni lowered her eyes and continued serving. Daniel watched the exchange without speaking. Kingsley leaned back comfortably. You didn't tell me you kept her, he said lightly. Daniel's response was calm. I don't give away what belongs to me. The words landed heavily in the quiet room. Aduni's stomach tightened. She placed the last dish on the table and stepped back, hoping to leave. But Kingsley spoke again. Come here. She hesitated. Daniel looked at her briefly. Stay, he said. Aduni stood beside the table, her hands folded, her heart racing. Kingsley studied her openly. From one night to live in staff, he said with a small laugh. That's quite an upgrade. Daniel didn't react. Instead, he turned to Aduni. Serve the wine. She obeyed immediately. Her hands were steady. But inside, something was changing. For the first time, she felt the weight of the situation clearly. This was not just a job. She was not just staff. She was part of a decision Daniel had made. An investment. A possession. After dinner, as Kingsley left, he paused near her. Be careful, he whispered. Nothing in this house is free. Then he walked away. That night, Aduni sat alone in her small room, staring at her phone. She thought about her brother sleeping safely in the hospital, about the salary that was coming, about the roof over her head. Then she remembered Daniel's words. I don't give away what belongs to me. For the first time since she got the job, Aduni wondered what exactly she had agreed to. Because in Daniel Lawson's world, help came with rules, and she was only beginning to learn them. Days passed, and the Lawson estate returned to its usual quiet rhythm. But something inside Aduni had changed. Kingsley's words stayed in her mind. Nothing in this house is free. She worked harder than ever, arriving earlier, leaving the kitchen spotless, double-checking every meal. If Daniel noticed her, he gave no sign. And that almost made it worse, because his silence felt like watchfulness. One afternoon, Mrs. Lawson called her to the sitting room. Aduni wiped her hands quickly and walked in. Yes, Ma? Mrs. Lawson was seated near the window, reading. She looked up slowly. You don't talk much, she observed. Aduni lowered her eyes. I prefer to focus on my work, Ma. Mrs. Lawson studied her for a moment. Where is your family? Kubwa, Ma. And your parents? My father is late. A pause. My younger brother's in the hospital, Aduni added quietly. Mrs. Lawson's expression softened slightly. What is wrong with him? Liver disease, Ma. Another silence filled the room. Then Mrs. Lawson nodded. You may go. The conversation was short, but something had shifted. For the first time, someone in the house had seen her not just as staff, but as a person. That evening, Aduni received a message from the hospital. Tunde needs additional medication. Cost, 85,000 naira. Her chest tightened. Her first salary was still weeks away. She checked her account. Nothing close to that amount. For the first time since arriving at the estate, panic returned. That night, after dinner, Mr. Bello approached her. The boss wants to see you. Her stomach dropped. Daniel was in his private office. Large desk, soft lighting, quiet power. He did not look up immediately when she entered. Yes, sir, she said carefully. He finished signing a document before speaking. You've been here 2 weeks. Yes, sir. No complaints. No, sir. Daniel leaned back slightly. You work hard. Aduni remained silent. Then he spoke again. If you need anything, speak through Mr. Bello. The statement was simple, professional, but something about it felt intentional. Aduni hesitated. This was her chance. Her brother needed medication, but something inside her resisted. She remembered that night. The envelope. The condition. The way help became control. "I understand, sir," she said instead. Daniel studied her. "You don't need anything?" Her throat tightened. She shook her head. "No, sir." A long silence buffaloed. Then Daniel nodded once. "You can go." Outside the office, Aduni's hands were shaking. She had refused help, not because she didn't need it, but because she was afraid of what it might cost. That night, she called Lucy. "I need to borrow money," she said. Lucy didn't ask questions. By morning, the 85,000 naira had been transferred. When the hospital confirmed the medication had been given, Aduni sat down quietly in the staff quarters. Relief filled her chest. But along with it came something stronger. Determination. She would work. She would save. She would survive. But she would not keep depending on Daniel Lawson. Because the more she accepted from him, the more power he would have over her life. Across the estate, in his office, Daniel looked at a report Mr. Bello had just handed him. Staff advance requests. None submitted. Mr. Bello hesitated. "Sir, the hospital called earlier. Miss Aduni's brother needed medication." Daniel's expression did not change. "She didn't ask?" "No, sir." A quiet moment passed. Then Daniel closed the file. For the first time since she arrived, something unfamiliar crossed his mind. She needed help, and she chose to struggle instead. Not fear, not pride. Something else. Strength. And for the first time, Daniel Lawson began to see Aduni Adebayo, not as an investment, but as someone who refused to belong to anyone. After that day, something changed. Aduni didn't see it immediately, but Daniel did. The Lawson estate ran on reports. Expenses, staff performance, schedules, supplies. Nothing important happened in the house without passing through his desk. And over the next 2 weeks, one detail kept appearing. No staff advances requested. Aduni Adebayo. No leave requests. No complaints. But the hospital invoices attached to the family insurance liaison told a different story. Medication. Tests. Follow-ups. Increasing costs. She was managing it alone. That evening, Daniel returned earlier than usual. As he walked past the kitchen, he slowed. Aduni was inside, unaware of him. She was calculating something on a small notebook. Column after column. Salary estimate. Hospital bills. Drug costs. Transport. Food for home. At the bottom of the page, one word was written and circled. Deficit. She closed the notebook quickly and returned to cooking. Daniel walked away without saying anything, but the image stayed with him. Later that night, Mrs. Lawson spoke during dinner. "The new girl cooks well," she said calmly. Daniel nodded slightly. "She reminds me of someone," Mrs. Lawson added. Daniel looked up. His mother rarely spoke emotionally. "Who?" he asked. Mrs. Lawson paused. Someone who understood responsibility too early. She did not explain further. But Daniel understood what she meant. Strength under pressure. The next morning, Aduni received a call from the hospital. Her heart dropped when she heard the doctor's voice. "We need to run additional tests," he said. "Tunde's condition is stable, but we must monitor liver function closely." "How much?" she asked quietly. 220,000 naira. Her hand tightened around the phone. Her salary was still 2 weeks away. Lucy had already helped once. There was no one else. For a long moment, she sat in the staff corridor, staring at the wall. Then she stood and went back to the kitchen. Because breaking down would not pay the bills. That afternoon, Mr. Bello approached her. "The boss wants you in the office." Her heartbeat quickened. Inside, Daniel was reviewing documents. He did not waste time. "How much is the test?" Aduni froze. "Sir? For your brother," he said calmly. The hospital called again. Silence filled the room. Her first instinct was denial. "I'll handle it, sir." Daniel's eyes lifted slowly. "That wasn't the question." Aduni swallowed. 220,000 naira. Daniel opened a drawer and took out a check. He placed it on the desk. "Submit it to the hospital." Aduni stared at it, but did not move. "Sir, I didn't ask." "I know." Another silence. Then she shook her head. "I'll pay you back." Daniel studied her for a long moment. "You think this is a loan?" "I don't want to owe you," she said quietly. Something unreadable passed through his expression. Then he slid the check closer. "You already owe me," he said calmly. The words hit harder than the money. Aduni's throat tightened. But this time, she didn't refuse. Because this wasn't about pride anymore. It was about time. And her brother didn't have much of it. She picked up the check slowly. "Thank you, sir." As she turned to leave, Daniel spoke again. "Aduni." She stopped. "I don't help people who waste effort," he said. A pause. "Don't fail." Outside the office, Aduni held the check tightly. Relief filled her chest. But along with it came a deeper understanding. Daniel Lawson wasn't just helping her anymore. He was watching her, investing in her survival, and in his world. Investments were expected to grow. The hospital confirmed the payment the same day. Tundi's tests were completed immediately. By evening, the doctor's voice carried a cautious optimism. "His liver function has stabilized. If this continues, we may be able to manage his condition long-term before considering surgery." For the first time in weeks, Aduni allowed herself to breathe. That night, she stood outside the staff quarters and looked up at the Abuja sky. 2 major bills paid. Treatment working. Her brother improving. But peace did not come with the relief. Because the more Daniel helped, the heavier the invisible weight around her life became. She was no longer just an employee. She was someone he had chosen to support. And, in Daniel Lawson's world, support always came with expectations. The change began subtly. Mr. Bellows started giving her additional responsibilities. "Madam wants a special menu for Saturday." "Sir prefers fresh meals when he returns late." "You'll now handle inventory planning." Aduni nodded at every instruction. More work meant more value. More value meant more security. She worked longer hours, sleeping later, waking earlier. The kitchen became her world. Spices, heat, calculations, planning. But exhaustion began to show. One evening, while carrying a tray to the dining area, her hand slipped slightly. A glass tilted. She caught it before it fell. But the tray shook. Daniel, who had just entered, noticed. "You're tired," he said. It wasn't a question. "I'm fine, sir," she replied quickly. He studied her face. "You work too much." "I need this job, sir." A short silence followed. Then Daniel walked past her toward the table. "Need and survival are not the same thing," he said quietly. Aduni didn't fully understand what he meant, but his words stayed with her. The next morning, Mrs. Lawson called her again. "You don't rest," the older woman observed. "I'm okay, Ma." Mrs. Lawson shook her head slightly. "Strength is not only about endurance," she said. "It is also knowing when to recover." She paused, then added, "From next week, you will have 1 full day off every 7 days." Aduni blinked in surprise. "Thank you, Ma." That day off meant she could visit the hospital regularly. It meant she could see Tunde smile again. But the biggest change came later that week. Daniel returned home earlier than usual and found her in the kitchen organizing supplies. "You handle the entire kitchen now?" he asked. "Yes, sir." "Alone?" "Yes, sir." He looked around. Everything was arranged neatly. Inventory updated. Menus planned. Waste minimized. Efficiency. Control. Discipline. He nodded once. "Mr. Bello will increase your salary next month." Aduni froze. "Sir, I didn't ask." "You didn't need to." He turned to leave, then paused. "I invest where I see growth." When he walked out, Aduni stood still for a long moment. Relief came first, then gratitude, then something else. Pressure. Because now it was clear. Daniel Lawson was not just helping her survive. He was building her into something useful, something reliable, something valuable. And in his world, value came with responsibility. That night, as she wrote new calculations in her notebook, one realization settled quietly in her heart. Her life was improving. Her brother was healing. Her future was becoming more stable. But every step forward was happening inside Daniel Lawson's world, and she still didn't know what he would expect in return. Aduni's first day off felt unfamiliar. For months, her life had been nothing but work, worry, and survival. Now, as she sat in a taxi, heading toward the National Hospital, the quiet morning felt almost unreal. When she entered the ward, Tunde's face lit up immediately. "Sister." He looked stronger. The swelling had reduced. His voice carried energy again. Aduni smiled, sitting beside him and holding his hand. "I told you you'll be fine," she said gently. The doctor's update later that morning confirmed the progress. "He's responding well," the doctor said. "If this continues, we may avoid immediate surgery." Relief filled her chest. For the first time, hope felt real. But as she stepped out of the hospital gate, her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Aduni Adebayo?" a male voice asked. "Yes. This is the finance department. Your brother's treatment account has been upgraded to priority care." She frowned slightly. "Upgraded?" "Yes. All payments are now guaranteed under a private sponsor." Her heart stopped. "Who is the sponsor?" A pause. "I'm sorry, Ma. That information is confidential." The call ended. Aduni stood still for several seconds. She didn't need confirmation. There was only one person who could do something like that. Back at the Lawson estate that evening, she worked quietly, her mind heavy with questions. She hadn't asked for this, and Daniel hadn't mentioned it. After dinner, she saw him in the living room, reviewing documents. Her hands tightened. This time, she didn't walk away. "Sir." Daniel looked up. "Yes?" "The hospital called today." He waited. "They said Tunde's account has a private sponsor." Silence. Aduni swallowed. "Was it you?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. Then he returned his attention to the document in front of him. "Yes." The single word carried no emotion. Aduni's chest tightened. "Sir, that's too much." Daniel looked up slowly. "It ensures treatment won't stop." "I didn't ask for that." "You didn't ask for the illness either." The room went quiet. Aduni struggled to find the right words. "I don't want to depend on you for everything." Daniel studied her face carefully. "You're not depending," he said calmly. "You're working." "That's not the same thing." A long silence followed. Then Daniel leaned back slightly. "Do you know why I help you?" he asked. Aduni shook her head. "Because you don't behave like someone waiting to be saved." His eyes held hers. "You behave like someone trying to stand." The words surprised her. Then his tone shifted slightly. quieter, but firmer. But understand this, Aduni. He closed the file in front of him. When I take responsibility for something, he paused. I don't walk away from it. The meaning settled heavily between them. Not just support, not just kindness, commitment, control, protection, possession. Aduni nodded slowly. Thank you, sir. She turned to leave, but as she reached the hallway, she stopped, because for the first time, she understood something clearly. Daniel Lawson was no longer just helping her. He had decided she was his responsibility, and, in his world, he never let go of anything he decided to keep. Later that night, as she prepared for bed, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was Lucy. Aduni, I need to tell you something, the message read. There are people asking questions about you. Her heart tightened. Who? Lucy's reply came a few seconds later. The man from that night, Kingsley. The past she thought was behind her had just started looking for her again. Aduni did not sleep that night. Lucy's message stayed in her mind like a quiet warning. The man from that night is asking about you. Kingsley. She had tried to forget him, tried to bury that part of her life under work, routine, and responsibility. But now the past was moving again. And men like Kingsley did not ask questions without a reason. The next morning, she forced herself into her usual routine. Breakfast at 7:30. Lunch preparation. Inventory check. Work was the only thing keeping her calm. Around noon, one of the security staff entered the kitchen. Mr. Bello is asking for you. Her heart tightened. In the administrative office, Mr. Bello looked uncomfortable. There's a visitor at the gate, he said. Aduni felt the blood drain from her face. Who? Before he could answer, a voice spoke from the doorway. Well, this place suits you. Aduni turned slowly. Kingsley stood there, smiling. Expensive suit, confident posture, the same hungry eyes. Her hands went cold. I asked security to let me in, he said casually. I told them I'm a business associate of the owner. Mr. Bello shifted uneasily. I'll leave you two, he said quickly, stepping out. The door closed. Kingsley walked around the room slowly, studying her. From one night to living in Maitama, he said, you moved fast. Aduni kept her voice steady. Why are you here? Kingsley leaned closer. You disappeared without saying thank you. I don't owe you anything. His smile widened. You owe me the introduction. Her stomach tightened. I didn't ask you for anything. Kingsley's tone changed slightly. Softer, but more dangerous. Do you think Daniel Lawson helps people for free? The words hit her like a weight. He helped you because of me, Kingsley continued, which means you're still part of my business. Fear rose in her chest. I work here now, she said quietly. That's all. Kingsley stepped even closer. No, he said. You belong to the network that brought you into that room. Before Aduni could respond, another voice entered the space. That network doesn't operate here. Kingsley turned. Daniel Lawson stood at the doorway. Calm, still, dangerously quiet. The air in the room changed instantly. Kingsley straightened slightly, but kept his smile. Daniel, I was just visiting your staff. Daniel walked in slowly. She's not your concern. Kingsley chuckled lightly. You forget. I introduced her to you. Daniel stopped a few steps away. And now, she works for me. Silence stretched between them. Then, Daniel spoke again, his voice low and controlled. Anything connected to my staff is handled by me. Kingsley held his gaze for a moment. Then, he laughed softly. Relax. I just wanted to see how your investment was doing. Daniel didn't react, but his next words carried quiet authority. You've seen enough. Another pause. Then Kingsley nodded. Fine, I'll leave. As he walked past Aduni, he whispered, This isn't over. The door closed behind him. The room stayed silent for several seconds. Aduni's hands were shaking. Daniel turned to her. Did he contact you before today? She nodded. Yes, sir. Daniel's expression hardened slightly. From now on, you don't speak to him. Yes, sir. Another silence. Then Daniel added, He won't come here again. The certainty in his voice felt like a wall being built around her. Protection. Control. Ownership. As he turned to leave, Aduni realized something important. Kingsley had come to remind her of her past. But Daniel had just made something else clear. She wasn't part of Kingsley's world anymore. She was part of his. And in Daniel Lawson's world, no one else was allowed to claim what he had chosen to protect. After Kingsley left, the Lawson estate became quieter than usual. Not peaceful, watchful. Aduni noticed the changes immediately. Security at the gate was stricter. Visitors were screened twice. Staff movements were recorded more carefully. Even Mr. Bello spoke in lower tones, as if the house itself had become more alert. No one explained anything, but Aduni understood. Daniel Lawson had taken Kingsley's visit seriously. And when Daniel took something seriously, he acted without announcing it. That evening, Aduni was finishing dinner preparations when Mr. Bello entered the kitchen. The boss wants to see you. Her heartbeat quickened. Daniel was in his office, standing near the window. He didn't turn immediately when she entered. Yes, sir? He faced her. Your phone. She hesitated, then handed it over. Daniel passed it to a security officer standing inside the room. He'll install protection software, Daniel said calmly. No unknown numbers will reach you. Aduni blinked. Sir, that's not necessary. Daniel's eyes held hers. It is. A short silence followed. Then, he added, If anyone tries to contact you about the past, I'll know. The words were not threatening, but they carried weight. Aduni nodded slowly. Yes, sir. The officer returned the phone a few minutes later and left. Now they were alone. Daniel walked back to his desk. You should understand something, he said. Aduni waited. People like Kingsley don't like losing control. Her hands tightened slightly. I don't want trouble, sir. You won't have any, Daniel replied. The certainty in his voice was absolute. Then he added something unexpected. I've assigned a driver for your hospital visits. Aduni looked up. Sir, I can use public transport. No. His tone was calm, but final. You won't move around Abuja alone for now. Silence filled the room. This was more than help. This was protection. Structured. Controlled. Permanent. Thank you, sir, she said quietly. But as she turned to leave, Daniel spoke again. Aduni. She stopped. You don't need to be afraid anymore. For a moment, his voice sounded different. Not softer, but steadier, like a man making a promise. Later that night, Aduni sat in the staff quarters, holding her phone. Security apps installed. Driver assigned. Restricted contacts. The estate was watching. Daniel was watching. And for the first time since coming to Abuja alone for school, she realized something strange. She felt safe. Not because her problems were gone. Not because life was easy. But because someone powerful had decided that nothing would be allowed to happen to her. The next day at the hospital, the driver waited outside as she visited Tunde. Her brother smiled when he saw her. You look happier, sister. She hesitated. Things are getting better, she said. And it was true. Bills were covered. Work was stable. Protection surrounded her. But as she left the hospital and saw the black Lawson vehicle waiting, a quiet thought crossed her mind. Her life was becoming easier, safer, more secure. But every solution, every protection, every improvement was coming from one man. Daniel Lawson was no longer just helping her. He was building a life around her. And slowly, without realizing it, Aduni was stepping deeper into his world. A world where protection and control were often the same thing. Life at the Lawson estate became more structured than ever. A driver took Aduni to the hospital twice a week. Security checked every unfamiliar call. Her salary was increased again after Mrs. Lawson approved her full control of the kitchen. From the outside, everything was improving. Her brother's health was stable. Her work was secure. Her environment was safe. But inside her, something uneasy had begun to grow. Because the more her life stabilized, the less it felt like her own. One afternoon at the hospital, the doctor gave her another update. Tunde is responding well, he said. If this continues, we may manage his condition without major surgery. Relief flooded her chest. But then, he added, however, long-term care will still be expensive. He'll need monitoring for years. Years. Aduni nodded slowly. She could handle that now. She had a job. She had support. She had Daniel. But as she sat beside her brother that day, watching him laugh at something on the small ward television, a quiet question entered her mind. What would happen to her life when Tunde was finally okay? Would she still be living at the estate? Still working under Daniel? Still depending on his protection? That evening, after returning to Maitama, she made a decision. For the first time in months, she called the University of Abuja. I want to resume my studies next semester, she said. The administrator checked her records. You'll need to pay outstanding fees and return full-time. Aduni looked at her notebook later that night. Tuition, books, transport, exam clearance. The total was heavy, but it was possible. If she planned carefully, if she saved, if she worked harder. The next morning, she asked Mr. Bello for permission. I would like to resume school next session, she said. Mr. Bello looked surprised. You'll need to discuss that with the boss. Her heart tightened. That evening, Daniel returned earlier than usual. Mr. Bello informed him. And soon, Aduni stood in his office again. Daniel closed the file he was reading. You want to go back to school? Yes, sir. You already have a stable job here. Yes, sir. Your brother's treatment is ongoing. Yes, sir. Silence filled the room. Then, Daniel asked the question that mattered. Why? Aduni took a slow breath. Because I don't want my life to stop at survival. His eyes held hers. I want to become a chartered accountant. I want to stand on my own someday. Another long silence. Then, Daniel leaned back slightly. If you return to school, you won't be able to work here full-time. I can manage part-time, sir. I'll work evenings and weekends. You'll be exhausted. I already am, she said quietly. That answer stayed between them. For the first time, Daniel looked at her not as staff, not as someone he was protecting, but as someone making a decision he did not control. Finally, he spoke. If you do this, you won't have the same support structure. Aduni nodded. I understand. Another pause. Then, Daniel said something unexpected. Submit your school fees to Mr. Bello. She froze. Sir? I'll cover it. Aduni's throat tightened. Sir, I can pay gradually. Daniel's voice was calm. I didn't offer a loan. Silence. Then she said the words that surprised even herself. I don't want everything in my life to come from you. For the first time, Daniel did not respond immediately. The room stayed quiet for several seconds. Then he nodded once. Good. Aduni blinked. You should learn to stand without depending on anyone. He opened his file again. Work out a schedule with Mr. Bello. Relief and something deeper filled her chest. As she left the office, she realized something important. For the first time since she entered his world, Daniel Lawson had not tightened his control. He had stepped back because the strongest thing he had seen in her was not her struggle, not her loyalty, not her need. It was her choice to build a life beyond survival. And for the first time, their relationship was beginning to change. From possession to respect.